Okay, good morning, everyone. First question I had was, has anyone heard of Oratane before? Just quick raise of hands. 1, 2, only a handful. Okay, great. So only a quick 20 minutes today, but we operate in the space of traceability, proving the origin of products, which I suppose for the stakeholder we are all ultimately responsible to, the consumer. They want to know that more and more. So we do it in a slightly different way to what's traditional traceability and call it scientific traceability. So we'll go through that and give you a feel for what we do, who we work with, and the benefits we can provide. But talking about the consumer, sometimes I don't like to read through all of these kind of bullet points because I think it's pretty kind of a given in this day and age. But they are expecting more. That's the key point. So the things that have been standards, the bar is constantly being raised. So safety and quality every single time. Brands they can trust from supply chain partners, retailers, restaurants they can trust. Transparency of where the product comes from. So what I just mentioned, but it's that intimacy, wanting to know a brand, wanting to know how and where a product was made, how it comes to the place of purchase and the consumer's plate. And accurate labelling. I know as a country we've been through all the country of origin stuff, but it's still a matter of, I suppose, proving what's inside the packaging is what the packaging says it is. What does this mean for the producer? Two big things. And it was really pleasing to hear these things at the kind of the introduction presentations yesterday morning. But developing brands and innovating. So I think there's this kind of macro trend or this macro recognition to be moving somewhat away from just commodity and trying to achieve some value add through unique kind of points of difference and creating a brand. And the goal of that is to obviously extract some more value for the producer. We can never maintain full control of the supply chain, but trying to maintain more control is an obvious goal. And the key thing is if you've invested to build a brand, then it makes sense to invest to protect that asset you've built. The second big bucket is being transparent and keeping promises. In this day and age, this is another topic of the 2 days up here, but I mean, it's referred to as the Internet of Things, it's referred to as a lot of things, but there's more information out there because there's more and better technology. What that means is consumers have an expectation to know more. So there's an element of being, you could call it proactive and transparent in keeping those promises as a brand and acting responsibly and sustainably, which I know on the whole all of us are. We understand in this previous presentation talking about soil health. If we're not sustainable, we don't have a future as an industry. But just to quickly explain the 2 arrows down the bottom. The more claims a brand is making, it kind of equates to risk because you need to substantiate those claims. So to use a really simplified example, if it's just an apple at the shelf in the shop, and the label says apple, then it just needs to be an apple. But if it's a variety, like it says pink lady, then it needs to be a pink lady apple. If it is an apple and a variety that says it's from a part of Tasmania, then you need to be able to substantiate that. And then, you know, in this day and age, people are doing things with organic and all sorts of stuff. So with all of these things, the point of those 2 arrows is to say the more claims you're making as a brand, you really need to be able to prove that and substantiate that to the consumer. Why is this important? And this is why our business came about, is there's more and more food fraud happening around the world. It's domestic, it's export, it's everywhere. To to put some context around that big number, because it's like it is just a big number without context, the world illicit drug trade is the same number. Another way to think about it is that 10% number. So 10% of what's commercially sold food is not what it says it is. And fraud means different things. Different things come to mind for different people. But it can be complete substitution of a product. It can be blending of a product. It can be all sorts of things using different ingredients for products that are different, saying it's from somewhere that it's not because you can charge a premium, saying it's organic, all sorts of things. And then we know recalls cost business a huge amount of money, whether it's to do with food safety or fraud issues. And there have been examples in the horticulture industry, which I'm sure come to mind for everyone in history of late. On the other side there, though, is just an important point, and I get the sense that everyone is recognising this, but it's just that provenance or where something is from is becoming an increasing purchase driver for consumers. Okay, so very quickly, who is Orotain? We are formed 10 years ago out of the University of Otago, Dunedin, New Zealand. We are kind of referred to as the CSI firm of the food world, but it's not to be the police. It's to partner with people who are doing the right thing and want to show they're doing the right thing. Our goal is to be the most trusted company at scientifically verifying origin, which is what I'm going to get into and show you. And we have offices across kind of Australia, New Zealand, and England, and we have other people in various parts of the world, but not so much an office. The point I want to make, though, is that the science we use to underpin what we do is not ours. It's not our IP. It's existed for decades. It's been used in forensics. So kind of, it's been peer-reviewed. It's robust. It stands up in a court of law. So when I talk about the science stuff, it's not something we own. It's recognised globally as a robust methodology. Some of our partners, so just as kind of finishing off on who Orotain is, we work across food, fibre and pharmaceuticals. So yeah, whether it's dairy, red meat, aquaculture, eggs, honey, and then obviously horticulture while we're here. And I just want to show, like I'll stop talking for 1 second, but like a quick 2-minute video of who are some of these partners and what they kind of have to say about Orotain.
Orotain and Lewis Road are, I think, a really complementary fit. I think we have very similar values and actually really similar aspirations. In summarising our relationship with Orotain, there's a great quote from Benjamin Franklin, and it's along the lines of, it takes many good deeds to build a reputation and only one mistake to ruin it. And I think that's the best reason to have the reassurance of Orotain that I can think of.
They're a technical company, but they're a commercial organisation. They understand the impact on our supply base. They've worked well with us to say, how can we limit that? How can we make sure that our suppliers get value out of their services, not just us? And Orotain just gave us an opportunity to say, yeah, you can tick that last box. You can actually understand that that's where the product came from. And we were really kind of impressed with that.
With this partnership with Orotain, all of our customers will now be able to take our premium serum, and in addition to our standard certificate of analysis, they'll be able to go to the Orotain website and pull up an independent verification certificate that Orotain has certified from their laboratory results that the country of origin that we say is on the bottle is truly what's in there.
As a chef, I need certainty that every single ingredient I have sourced comes from a reputable source. The question is, how can you be 100% sure? Orethane has a unique scientific capability for proving origin to farm level. I can then pass that knowledge on to my customers. And I'm finding customers now are more and more demanding, and quite rightly so. Customers now want to know exactly where their food comes from.
They're a commercial organisation with a long history and similar aspirations and visions or strategies to Farm Pride. They want the same thing that Farm Pride wants, and that is the elimination of food fraud.
Okay, there was one more there, but it wasn't at all kind of relevant, so we'll stop the video there. But for those of you who don't know, Foodbuy and Compass, they're one of the largest food service companies in the world. So that was their CEO in the UK, where we are used to kind of ensure looking, I suppose, back up the supply chain so that they, have full confidence that what they are giving their consumers in the food service industry is what it says it is. So just to explain kind of scientific traceability and traditional traceability, because we don't see ourselves as any kind of silver bullet to replace anything existing. So we deliberately kind of use the word "and" up the top there. But talking about the right-hand side there, traditional traceability, we are following, packaging, or we are following a barcode through the supply chain. We're following or a paper trail, whatever it is. And to achieve traceability, you're effectively having to go from, for lack of a better term, from one node back to the other. So you're going from point E back to point D, back to point C, back to point B, back to A to figure out where something's from. And that's obviously quite a simplistic version or a simplistic conceptual supply chain. On the left-hand side with what we do, our whole premise is that you can't rely on the packaging. So we test the product itself, and we use unique properties that are in there, which I'll explain a little bit further. But from a traceability point of view, it just means that you can take the product from anywhere in the supply chain and not have to rely on, I suppose, preceding data and be able to prove its origin kind of then and there. So leapfrogging traditional traceability. So it's a new thing. It's quite innovative use of the science being applied to food, and it's for those who believe in integrity. It's a new level of integrity that can be incorporated. So yeah, how do we know where products come from? Quite often people will respond saying, "Oh, you guys are doing a DNA test." It's not a DNA test. Like a DNA test will tell you the species. It'll tell you what it is, but it won't tell you where it's from. What we are analysing the product for is a combination of trace elements and isotopes. And I'm not a scientist, so for any scientists in the room, please don't pepper me with hard science questions. But like in a simple kind of understanding is, since the Big Bang and the geology of the planet, there are unique profiles of trace elements across our planet. So that if you take, using that species example, the same type of apple, same breed of apple, whatever it is, from one paddock versus another or one country versus another, those trace elements and isotopes, that profile, which is what we build, can be differentiated. So the key word there is trace elements. We're talking about parts per million, parts per billion, and it's pretty sophisticated mass spectrometer kind of lab equipment which does all of that. Again, though, the point is that science is not new, that we don't own that. It's what happens with the data from those lab tests which makes the robust fingerprint, makes something what's called statistically fit for purpose that can be used in a commercial sense. So that's what we do. So that's kind of a little bit about what we do, and now I want to just jump into some like real examples. And I'm going to start with just the cotton industry here in Australia, just because we've done a lot of work with Australian cotton for the last 18 months, just to kind of get a feel for what these fingerprints kind of look like and how they're used. And then I'll jump into a few horticulture examples. But this is New South Wales cotton, 4 different growing regions or growing farms, to put it specifically. So Hay, Moree, Narrabri, Warren. This is, I suppose, just one of our models. It's called a linear discriminatory analysis. Our statisticians do up to a dozen different models, again, to make sure that the science and the stats create something that is statistically robust and commercially usable. This model, though, is the most easy to understand and the one we use all the time for describing a fingerprint. So what we've got here is, and I apologise because the colours are quite similar, but we've got kind of 4 distinct spheres or ellipses, we call them, which correlate to the 4 different farms. And what's inside those ellipses, each one of these dots is a sample. So the statistics are showing that we can clearly differentiate cotton from this part of New South Wales to this part of New South Wales to this part of New South Wales to this part of New South Wales. So it's quite kind of powerful information for, cotton specifically is not something you can put a barcode on. And within this industry, what happens is a lot of substituting in Asia, in the mills. And so what comes out as yarn out the other side of the spinning mill is claimed by the mills to be still 100% Australian, but kind of everyone in the industry knows that it's not, that it's been either completely substituted or it's been blended and shandied, whatever you want to call it. Similarly in cotton, and I just use this one from California because these 3 farms are actually like on top of each other. They're right next to each other, but over here, like there's clear differentiation from the science. So I'm going to get into some more examples, but everyone's probably or I assume everyone's kind of asking the question how does it work for a producer or a brand? Like what's kind of our business model? The way it works is we better point up here. We take samples of the legitimate product, and as I said, it's got this profile because of the trace elements and isotopes unique to its geography. We do our analysis, so the lab analysis and then the statistical analysis to create what is your product's fingerprint. And this can be done to different resolutions. Like there are many commercial use cases where just a country of origin fingerprint is important because the risk of fraud is not going to be your neighbour within Australia. But depending on what the client wants, yes, it can get down to kind of region of origin, farm of origin. So we have that unique fingerprint in the database. The next kind of part of the process, if you want that, like if you want to be proactive, and I'll kind of use export as an example. So say someone's exporting to Asia and they're worried about counterfeit products, so someone who's claiming to be their brand that is not their brand. We will take random surveillance audit samples out of market, and we're not the supply chain experts, so we're not the ones that determine exactly what point in the supply chain we do that, but we talk with our partners about what makes sense from a pragmatic point of view and from mitigating the risk point of view. We do the same test, and obviously if it's legitimate product, we're going to get a tick. And if it's not, and I'll show you a couple of examples, then the fingerprint is not going to look the same. So we kind of, that's a conceptual summary of how programs can work. I suppose the key message or commercial takeout is that we're not just a test to detect if something is what it says it is or not. By doing this and setting up this in-market surveillance audits, we quickly become a deterrent in the supply chain, because we encourage all of our partners to tell their supply chains this is happening. We make ourselves very visible. So it's the same concept as the police and speed cameras and random breath testing. You can't be everywhere testing everything, but by doing it randomly, you can definitely change the behaviour of those who are cheating the system and doing wrong. So just looking at like applications for horticulture, PVR is a really obvious one, and we have had conversations with some people in this space, but it's clearly something where there's a lot of product development, IP involved, royalties, commissions. So there's two ways to look at it. There's people who are doing the right thing, and they should be able to have as many things in place to protect the integrity of doing the right thing. And then there are the people that own these rights who want to make sure what is out there in the market is pretty much, only coming from farms who've paid for the royalties and the license to use these proprietary products. So I've anonymised all of this, so it's not, we're not in the business of sharing people's secrets. But just as an example, these are horticulture products from Victoria, Australia, and just showing that it can be really clearly differentiated within that region. This is an example of an audit, so what I was talking about before. So we've gone in market based on this client, and I've said we want you to pull samples out from these points in the supply chain, and we want you to test if it's legitimate or not. And so these black dots, so down here, sorry it's a bit small, is the key. Some of them fall within an agreed, ellipse farm origin, and some of them fall outside. So that is when we go back to the client and say, you have product in your supply chain which is inconsistent with your agreed supply. So this is an example, I suppose, where the motivation is similar, like it's economically motivated. Someone's moving products and saying it is something because they want to make money, but it's more around, from the client's point of view, around QA and safety. So in this instance, they have like an agreed supplier network, and there's a person in that supply chain who is the aggregator, and they can aggregate from, let's say, 10 agreed sources. But knowing that things are seasonally fluctuating, in this instance, what's happened is they've gone outside of those agreed, but only those agreed have, I suppose, what the end customer has allowed contractually in terms of QA and food safety protocol. So this was a real, big no-no, but it's real evidence that can be provided for them to go back and have those conversations in the supply chain. And this is just an FYI, but this is the Netherlands, who are obviously very good at greenhouses and hydroponics and stuff like that. But this is just to show that even between greenhouses, which are literally on the other side of the road from one another, that the chemical fingerprint is different. And the last example is kind of just around export, because I think into the future for Australian horticulture, export will play more of a role for different horticulture industries. For those of you who aren't kind of aware, and I'm certainly no expert, but counterfeit is considered normal in China. It's just part of their culture. There are businesses over there, and they exist to make fake stuff, and it's not frowned upon. It's just completely normal over there. So it's not frowned upon. And there are two types of counterfeit. So there's type 1 counterfeit, which is the consumer knows it's fake. So they know they're paying, I don't know, $50 for a Louis Vuitton bag. I know that's fake. But then there's type 2 counterfeit, which is kind of the newer advent, which is the consumer doesn't know it's fake. And this is really applicable to the food industry. And this is why you hear all the stories in the media all the time around infant formula and stuff like that. And there are stories for horticulture as well. But I've used this photo because this premise we work off, that you can't rely on packaging, is summarised and captured here. This is a stand in the Guangzhou markets where you go and you buy whichever branded box you want. So it's really, really small, but there are Australian and New Zealand brands in there, whether it's Reed's Cherries, whether it's Zestberry Kiwi Fruit, whatever it is. And it just happens blatantly right there. So they'll bring in whatever it is, product from different parts of the world, buy the box, put the product in there, and then charge a premium, make their money, live to fight another day. The issue though for you, the brand, is your brand is out there with inferior product in it, inferior food safety, and it's a question of whether you are comfortable with that or not comfortable with that. So the last example is around an export example. Again, I've anonymised this, just I suppose for confidence with client, but it's a New Zealand product. These are 3 different countries of origin. The blue is New Zealand. And we took products, we showed them it was from where it says it was. So this was products, taken out of the markets in China. But other products we took out with the same label on it. So everything looking at it, box, label, little sticker, said that it was from another origin, and that origin is Chile. And so it's just evidence that this is happening. And I mean, this is just one example for the purpose of this presentation. So just to summarise, the advantages of Orotain are that, well, A, it's commercially proven. We've been around a while, so we've kind of successfully commercialised a science application. The second thing there is that it's production friendly. So we don't need to do anything to anyone's existing production, harvest, supply chain partners. There is no equipment. All we need is samples of product. And then the last thing is that it is a product test, which is, I suppose, exactly why we exist, that you can't rely on packaging, but you can, through the robustness of this science, rely on the product test and proving where a product is from. How you wish to kind of utilise that service is kind of only limited to one's imagination. So I've just provided some examples today. This is one of our clients in New Zealand. So we've got the two big apple producers in New Zealand, but this is Taylor. And yeah, I suppose just a kind of a finishing remark is we've talked largely about fraud and mitigating risk, but if you flip it over to the other side of the coin, and in this instance or this example is more and more people are using Orotain as a new kind of string in their bow to support provenance as one of their marketing pillars. So that's it from me. We do have a stand down on the exhibition floor, so happy to obviously talk to anyone at any stage if anyone's interested. It's just kind of opposite the CSIRO stand if you're looking for it on the map. But that's me, thank you.